Well, I think one of the things that the Attorney General is going to do is determine what she is going to withhold and what she is going to redact, because the Epstein bill comes in three parts. First part gives you a number of categories of documents that are compelled to be released by Congress under the bill. But the second category is all of the exceptions to that the Attorney General and her sole discretion can rely upon in either redacting or withholding information. And as you just noted, they sort of reverse engineered an investigation, it appears, because one of those exceptions is where it would interfere with or compromise an active ongoing investigation or prosecution. And so you have to ask yourself, is there really new information here that would justify a new investigation? Or did somebody smart read the text of the bill and realize that the out that they have always wanted was built into this bill as a feature, not a bug?
There's a mention of what the Deputy Attorney General posted on X. I'm going to ask you that in a second. I want to ask Swin this first. So interestingly tonight, Swin, they called a lid on the press pool, the White House press pool, which means no more official business, no more public events, which is notable because he's got the bill and could sign it into law. Donald Trump tends to like to do these things in public. But I'm reading from your reporting here. On Tuesday afternoon, the president suffered a blow to his ego and to his aura of personality cult, no doubt. The resistance to Trump's agenda, his narrative, is having an effect, which is why he and people will resort to an increasingly blatant array of dirty tricks to protect their man in Washington and Mar-a-Lago. How do you think this goes next?
Well, the Trump-Epstein cover-up will continue until morale improves. Look, this is a government that is built almost entirely on bad faith in policy and practice, and this is no different here. Look, just to dig in on the point that you guys were talking about earlier, we don't have to speculate. If you talk to senior Trump administration officials, they will tell you, whether privately or otherwise, if you ask them, look, do Trump, Pam Bondi, and the DOJ is the investigation that the president ordered up, they're now doing, is this a way that, you can keep certain files that Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel very much do not want to be released to Congress or the American people under lock and key? They will say words like, of course. This is something they have been talking about for days, if not weeks, in terms of like a failsafe. Look, Trump expended a ton of political capital and lost when he tried to crush this vote in the House, and then it went on to the Senate, and they, of course, passed it. And him and his DOJ and Pam Bondi have built in there, and this is by design, a escape hatch and a plan B that is a much better insurance policy than Mike Johnson could ever possibly give them.
When Bondi was, we were all cracking up today at the information, new information. I don't know, information, the habada. But then at one point she says, I'll refer you. Again, I got to say, the thing about this is, under ordinary procedure, like this is how all Department of Justice is. We don't comment on ongoing investigation. Right. These folks have completely blown that up. They talk about anything whenever they want. They
order investigations.
They order investigations, and then they talk about the ones they've ordered. Right. So what was she referring to when she said Todd Blanche?
I'm going to tell you what I think she was referring to. 6 days ago, Todd Blanche got into a Twitter war of sorts, or an X war, with George Conway, the conservative legal commentator, who was criticizing his questioning of Ghislaine Maxwell on the basis of the documents that were released last week by House Oversight, saying that those documents undermined the transcribed interview that Todd Blanche took.
And basically saying, like, how could you
rely on that?
And your questioning was so incompetent because you didn't ask about all these things that are in this.
Correct. And here's the response. George, you've never been confused for a trial lawyer, and these kind of posts explain why. And then beyond the insult, when I interviewed Maxwell, law enforcement didn't have the materials Epstein's estate hid for years and only just provided to Congress. What he seems to be saying in that is, I didn't have that information because it's not available to the Department of Justice. And time will tell whether that is a good faith statement or not. But that appears to be what Pam Bondi was referring to when she's talking about the Deputy Attorney General's ex post.
We should note that the Epstein estate countered that and said we were never requested for this. We didn't hide anything. We turn over anything as soon as we need it.
President Trump has just announced he's signed the bill compelling the Justice Department to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. Now, he made the announcement a short time ago on Truth Social. I want to bring in senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. So, all right, so he signed it. What now happens? What would, in any normal circumstances happen at the Department of Justice, and do we know what's going to happen here? Because Pam Bondi has come out talking about this new investigation, which the president urged her to take.
So all of this is highly abnormal. I mean, in a regular case, DOJ would never just open up its files like this, but we have a piece of legislation now just signed into law moments ago. That triggers DOJ's 30 days. They now have 30 days to make all of this public, to get it over to Congress, which actually puts the disclosure right on the eve of Christmas, December 19th or so. One really important thing I want people to understand, though, there's a huge loophole in the law itself that President Trump just signed, and that says that DOJ does not have to make public any materials relating to ongoing criminal investigations. And what that means is it's going to be up to Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and Kash Patel. If they want to say, well, that relates to some ongoing investigation, it will be redacted or it will be left out, and we will not see that. So I know there's this expectation of now we're going to see everything. Not necessarily so.
What's so extraordinary about this, though, is Kash Patel was the guy who was on all these podcasts when he was not the FBI director under Democrats during when President Biden was in power, saying, you know, look, they could release this stuff right away. It's, right. You know, the FBI could do this right away. He's now in charge of the FBI, and he's going to be one of the people determining what is actually released.
Kash Patel has been through several iterations, right? Initially, it was why aren't they disclosing everything? Then let's not forget, July, 4 months ago, both Kash Patel and Pam Bondi endorsed a memo that said nothing to see here, right. No further cases to be brought. Moving along, right. And now they're on all the way the other right. side again.
And the only thing that's changed, I mean, there was no point in having an investigation months ago, right. Which was clearly something the president wanted. And then all of a sudden, the president just recently says, sends her a very public message saying there should be an investigation. These Democrats, Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, and other, Reid Hoffman. And now it seems like that will be perhaps, if they're going to have some reason to block a release, that would be the reason.
That's sort of the paradox of it, by the way. If they are actually doing what the law says and blocking out information on ongoing criminal investigations, then the information they'll be blocking is information on if they're investigating Bill Clinton or Larry Summers. That should be the stuff that should be redacted out. But, there's the clip today where someone asked Pam Bondi, what's with the sudden turnaround from 4 months ago when you said nothing to see here to now, yes, sir, Mr. President, we're turning it all over? And she said sort of tersely new information. Right. Count me skeptical of that. I mean, these cases have been going on for decades. The victims have come forward. They have spoken years ago. I am suspicious of this claim that something brand new came along. It seems
like the new information is, A, the president telling her to launch this, and also the information that came out that House Democrats released saying, some of these emails, which is the reason we've now heard about Larry Summers and the Bill Clinton references.
Exactly, which are entirely political factors. They're not new investigative information. It's not something new. It's not as if there was some previously unknown victim.
The government had 100%. Access to those emails themselves.
Yeah, from day one. And I do want to make this point because I've been asked this quite a bit. Can people still realistically be charged because it all happened so long ago? And the answer is yes. If you look at federal law, there's actually, and Ghislaine Maxwell actually appealed on this basis. She said, well, the conduct that was alleged against me was back from the 1990s. I got charged in 2020. That's too late. And the Court of Appeals, Second Circuit, said, no, there's essentially no statute of limitations. So if they can show that somebody was involved in interstate movement of a minor for sex, that person can still be charged. I think that's probably what the victims are most care about at this point.
Ellie Honig, thanks very much.
Thanks, Anders.
Coming up next, my exclusive conversation with House Speaker Emeritus Nancy Pelosi, the first since she's...
Trump, and legal experts are pointing this out, other analysts, that Trump's already using a loophole to destroy the intent of the legislation he just signed. The legislation that he spent months trying to block. Even today, it looked like he was going to stall. He did sign it, I guess, to be fair. He did. Eventually, he was going to be forced to do it anyway because there was a veto-proof majority in both the House and the Senate, but he signed the Epstein-related legislation. The issue is he is already trying to use a loophole, and this was noted by the analyst I showed you, basically saying that he still has a lot of leeway over what does and doesn't get published, and what may or may not have already been destroyed. This is a man that has stolen documents. At least that's the allegation in the indictment that never got finished, but he took documents that didn't belong to him to Mar-a-Lago. And there was always a chance that maybe some of those documents were damaged or destroyed or altered or whatever. right? Now, that was never proven in a court of law, but it's important to realize that Trump can use the active criminal investigation loophole, in addition to potentially destroying documents, but use the active criminal investigation loophole to hide whatever he wants to hide. Because what it's noted in the legislation is that if there's something that's the subject of an active criminal investigation, and I understand why you put that in there, then you can't obviously release that information. Because let's say they're about to nail another Epstein accomplice. Let's say they were about to arrest that guy or whoever. Then you don't want to put that information out there. I understand that. But this gives them the ability, and what notes here, I think Eli Honig said something like, well, now he could just tell Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, whoever he wants, Dan Bongino, and say to them, I want you to actively criminally investigate the claims in this particular section of the document because it mentions me or one of my allies. You don't have to say who you're actively criminally investigating. You don't actually have to lay charges. You don't even necessarily need to do any actual criminal investigating. But if you come and say, oh yeah, pages 50 to 72 or whatever, where it talks about what Trump knew and didn't know, that's under active criminal investigation, well then lo and behold, they'll be able to hide it. So keep this in mind. They're already destroying the intent of what the American people want to see.